Hi everyone. So my name is Jennifer and I am the group leader of the wonderful group 3. In the outside world, I'm a wife and a mom. I have 2 kids, and as many of you did, my daughter, she goes to AMS. She's in 2nd grade. Her name is Josephine. I also have a son, Cooper, who's in preschool. I'm married to my husband, Eric, who I met from USC. We went to USC back in the day when you didn't need to bribe your way in. It was still a good school back then, but if that tells you anything about my sophistication level. I work for an investment company. I'm the CFO at 2 startups. One is the new shapewear line for Kim Kardashian, and the other is the music management company for Post Malone and other producers and artists. So to summarize, I'm not a teacher, I'm not a theologian, and this guy over here is my boss. So you might wonder why I'm up here and think I can tell you anything about the Sacraments of Initiation. And honestly, I'm really waiting for someone to pull me off stage at any moment. I took a somewhat circuitous road to completing my Sacraments of Initiation. My whole family is Catholic. My dad and uncle went to Loyola High School. I know a lot of you did. Back in the day, it was a boarding school. When my dad went there, he was an altar boy. My brother went to Loyola also. My sister went to Marymount. One of my cousins is even a priest. I was at his ordination in Chicago a couple of years ago. And it's not like having a priest in your family makes you any more Catholic, but I mean, we were really, really Catholic when I was growing up. I have wonderful memories of going to church with my grandparents and cousins when I was a kid. I remember huge Easter parties at my grandparents' house with the entire family celebrating together. In 1976, I was born and immediately baptized. In 1984, I was in 2nd grade and received my first communion. There's a picture of my cousin just for proof that I do have a priest cousin. I actually still have my first communion dress because it was so special to me and it was the most beautiful thing I owned. My mom, she had this custom-made white dress with satin and lace, and I still have it in my closet. I also have this tiny little first communion book that my grandma gave me. But sometime over my middle school years, my side of the family stopped celebrating their faith. Over time, my uncle, my dad's brother, had died in a car accident. My grandpa died shortly after there, essentially died of a broken heart. My sister eventually became paralyzed because she had a tumor on her spine. And I think a lot of these things have just made faith unbearable for my family. And I come from a family where we just don't discuss these things. We just kind of suck it up and deal with it. So whether or not that's the case of why people just suddenly stopped going to church, I might never know. But that's my hypothesis of why faith declined in my family. And I think it's just a really raw place for anybody to go. When high school came around for me, even though I went to a Catholic high school, I never went through confirmation. It's really weird too because I don't even remember it being on the table. Like I don't remember my friends talking about it. Nobody brought it up. So time passed. I didn't do my confirmation in high school. I went to USC. I'd go to mass maybe once every month or so at the church by campus. There were a few years after college where I didn't go to church anymore. It just, wasn't, again, kind of not something I did in my 20s. But by my early 30s, I was dedicated to attending the 5:30 Mass at St. Monica's. I was at a point in my life where I just really wanted to feel connected. My life revolved around work at that point. It wasn't, I didn't have a husband, I wasn't married, my kids weren't born yet, I was working 60, 70 hours a week, and I just felt really disconnected. I was just this human. I'd go to work, I'd go home, I'd go to sleep, I'd go home, just on this repeat cycle. So I started attending the 5:30 Mass at St. Monica's out in Santa Monica, and it became my touchstone. I really enjoyed being at church and reconnecting with other humans in a really pure and lovely way. Oddly enough, I even saw some of my coworkers that work at church from time to time. So we started going to church together. We'd have dinner afterwards, and this was really what my soul needed. I needed this respite at the end of the week. I needed to feel that connection. And I remember when I started attending Mass at St. Monica's in 2007 or 2008, I went to confession. There was a new priest there. His name was Father Tim. So I'm in confession. I'm crying. I'm telling Father Tim, I need to feel connected. I'm just going to work. I'm on this treadmill. I'm in that really weird place where I'm kind of crying to him, the priest. I make sure I'm face to face with him and, crying and telling him my whole life story. but I'm somehow feeling relieved. So I leave and I'm walking down Lincoln. I'm practically skipping down the street, telling my friend this a couple days later. I'm saying, oh my gosh, I found this wonderful place. My spirit is so lifted. I feel so much better. And telling the story, and my friend says, we went to high school with Father Tim. You know that, right? So it turns out that Father Tim is actually this guy, Tim Klosterman, from my high school. And so the next week, I go back and I'm, hi, Father Tim, I'm Jennifer. Remember, we went to high school together. I'm really normal. So now we're friends on Facebook, and he didn't bring it up, a couple years ago at our class reunion, so that was great. But really, though, that was the mystery of the church to me. I needed to be part of something, and here was this someone I actually knew who welcomed me home. So since 2008, it's been rare that I've missed a Sunday Mass. Wherever I am, I'll find a church to go to. I love to hold hands with strangers during the Lord's Prayer. I like to look at my neighbor and wish them peace. This resets me and reminds me that I'm connected. I'm not meant to be this random satellite floating through space on my own. We're meant to belong to each other. Once at a book event, I heard Father Boyle say, "You are the other me, and I am another you." I remember that each week when I go to Mass, and I think namaste means essentially the same thing, that the soul in one person acknowledges the soul in another person. There's this fascinating need across culture, across religion, across time for us to feel connected. So after all that, it's 2010. I get married to my wonderful husband, Eric, who I know from USC. His family didn't practice religion growing up at all. His mother is Jewish, his dad is Protestant, but he went to Santa Margarita Catholic High School, which some of you probably know. So he has this wonderful mashup of faith around him, but nothing that anybody really ever committed to. So we have my daughter in 2017, our son in 2015, and we agreed that our kids would be raised Catholic. The baptisms of my children were definitely a highlight for their first year for me. The symbolism of the purity, welcoming them into the faith of my family, the faith of our ancestors of the past 2,000 years. I love everything about baptisms. I love the ritual, I love the solemnity, I love the crying babies and the families gathering together to baptize not only their own children, but also to witness the baptisms of other families' children. It's all so beautiful to me. Oh, and by the way, though, that's not my son at his baptism. This is my son at his baptism. So we're not really quite perfect at this whole thing, but whatever. So now this year I'm preparing to celebrate my daughter's first communion. I'm not entirely sure that she understands the commitment she's making. I mean, she's 7 years old. In a few short months, will she entirely understand? Honestly, I can't even stand up here and tell you that I even understand what happens during baptism, during your first communion, or during confirmation. I'm not a theologian. But I've discussed this at length with my cousin, who happens to be a theologian, Father Matt. My amazing cousin, he received his BA from Yale in physics and philosophy. He received his master's degree in theology from CTU in Chicago. He was ordained at the Catholic University. He was ordained a Catholic priest in 2018, and now he's getting his PhD in Notre Dame. So he is a theologian. So I presented these questions to him, the whats and the hows, and he has said one of the most resounding things to me. He said, if I could explain it to you, that's probably not what it is. The mystery is just too great for words. And that notion gives me a lot of peace. Maybe he's right, or maybe he was just trying to get me to go away. I guess that will be one of the other great mysteries of life. But regardless, I know I feel something when I walk into church. I know I feel something when I receive the Eucharist. I know I'm overcome with emotion when I say the Lord's Prayer, holding hands with the person standing next to me. I know these things because I feel these things, and that's enough for me. So while I can't tell you the what or the why would I can tell you, I can tell you the why. Why did I baptize my children? Why is my daughter going through First Communion? That I can tell you with great certainty. I want my children to start life believing in something greater than themselves. I want them to know that they have a special place in history. And I want them to start life by believing in miracles. So these sacraments are very important to me. And that brings me to my own why. For almost 10 years, I sat in church every week and regularly thought about not having completed my confirmation. I felt Catholic. I am Catholic. I've been a Catholic since 1976. Every time I filled out a form that asked my religion, I checked Catholic. When my kids were baptized and they asked for the religion of the mother, I wrote Catholic. When I applied for my kids to go to AMS, I made it known, we are Catholic. I've been proudly Catholic for 40 years. And let me tell you guys a little secret. In all those years, no one ever asked me if I was confirmed. This wasn't like a passport to get into the Catholic Church. No one ever asked to see my confirmation ID. It never once happened. But in my heart, I felt a little shame voice that told me I never fully committed. And by the time I hit 40, I truly felt embarrassed to admit it. Why didn't I do it at 20, at 30, but now at 40? It would have been easier just to sweep it under the rug and stop thinking about it. So at 2017, at 40 years old, I just happened to be thinking about wanting to be confirmed. It just happened that Deacon Derek was talking about the new RCIA class starting next week. So I walked out to his table after Mass and registered. There was no pomp and circumstance. No one jumped out of the bushes and yelled at me, "Aha, we knew you weren't a real Catholic." No one looked at me differently in the parking lot. And to be honest, when I see Monsignor Barry, he doesn't look at me any differently now either. So I just registered, and that was that. So for a full year, I went to RCAA class every Wednesday night. I never missed a class. I took every ounce of Catholic history and mystery that I could. I still probably can't name all the apostles, and I'm still trying to figure out what my favorite parable is, but that experience made me appreciate my faith so much more. I appreciate knowing on a deeper level why we do what we do and understanding the beautiful history of our faith. Here's a picture from my confirmation night. The next slide. That's me. My husband was so inspired by my journey and the difference it made in me that he's commencing his RCAA journey this year, as a matter of fact. So next spring, both my husband and my daughter will receive the Eucharist for the first time. But still, why did I go through the confirmation process? I could have just read Catholicism for Dummies and called it a day. Well, confirmation was a very important step to me for many reasons. First, my children. I was asking them to take part in a religion and in a faith, but I felt like I had not fully committed myself. So in a very real way, I felt like I was being inauthentic to myself and to them. While I had been faithful about going to church regularly, I needed to take this step to be a disciple. I do not believe that God is a God of paperwork. I don't think it's the same as the IRS, and I just needed to check a box and get this form filled out. So did it really matter if I went through the confirmation process, if the goal was just to walk away with a piece of paper at the end? Definitely not. I did not look at this as a check the box scenario. But I suppose I had the luxury of deciding when I completed my confirmation. I chose 2017 as the year. My husband is choosing 2019 as his year. And I know from speaking to many of you that you're here because your parents and also the church has chosen this year for you. But I hope that 1 year into this program, you're finding your choice for being here. I do think it's hard when we're in the process, but someday, hopefully, you will look back and realize that your appreciation for the church and for our faith grew during this process. And you can pass it on to others like I am passing it on to my children and the others around me. So second, my reason for going through confirmation was for you. I wanted to confirm my connection to my fellow Catholics. I wanted to be part of your growth and part of helping you to pass it on. And I mean this without hyperbole, but my favorite time of the month over the past year has been going to Mass with you. I love being in church with you. I love watching you walk up to get the Eucharist. I know something special is happening there. You're growing and carrying on our faith, and it will continue through generations. I love this is my daughter starting second grade. I love bringing her to church when you are there. I love how she looks up to you. I mean, look around you. You guys are just amazing, wonderful, loving people, and I couldn't be prouder that she has you to look up to. And I love that we can walk this journey together, and I know that if any of you in this room ever needed anything, I would be there for you. And to me, that is the confirmation. So lastly, my reason for going through confirmation was for community. We live in a time in which, though I truly believe it's the safest time in history for most people on this planet, it's also the most disconnected. We've forgotten that we belong to each other. We've forgotten that we have a home in the church. We have a home with each other. It's too easy to step over another human being on our way into a Starbucks for a $5 cup of coffee. Confirmation reminds us that we belong to each other. We are not meant to be alone, and we're not meant to leave others feeling lonely. So with that, I hope you will take what I learned over 40 years of trial and error and remember that you always have a home here, that you will always be connected, that there is the beauty of our faith, and that's what I think the beauty of confirmation is. And one last story before I wrap up. I had an elderly neighbor named Charlie. He was from Hungary. On Easter, about 5 or 6 years ago after Easter dinner, I was walking through the neighborhood with my husband and daughter. She was just a baby at the time. Charlie and his wife were getting out of the paratransit van. His wife was in a wheelchair. It was about 4 p.m. So we tell them Happy Easter and ask them how their day was. And Charlie tells us that he and his wife had taken the paratransit downtown to the cathedral for Easter Mass. And after Mass, the paratransit van never came back. They just left Charlie and his wife just standing on a street corner in downtown LA on Easter Sunday for 2 hours before they remembered that they forgot this old man standing down there and finally came around to, getting him back. I was furious for Charlie, and I would have been livid if it happened to me, let alone me as an elderly man with a wheelchair-bound wife. But how did Charlie respond? This sweet, soft-spoken Hungarian man said, "It's a small price to pay to get to go to church." And I melted into a puddle right there on the street. It's a small price to pay to get to go to church. It's hard to think of going to church in 2019 Los Angeles as being a luxury, but here was this sweet, humble man reminding me of what a beautiful gift we have, and I really hope to pass this message on to you. Take advantage of having the luxury of going to church whenever you want to. Looking back, I really wish I had taken advantage of it more in my younger years. I wish that in my days of stress or days of anxiety or even days of joy, I had taken a moment to sit in church and just enjoy the peace and enjoy the feeling of community around me. I know Mass feels so long sometimes, and you have a lot going on. I know there's a lot going on, finals, papers, sports, and a million other things and demands for your time. But try to enjoy this moment of respite. There's an old Zen saying that you should sit in meditation for 20 minutes a day. Unless you're too busy, then you should sit for an hour. I know this seems like some silly old Catwoman poster, but really think about it. I'm not going to stand up here and tell you that other things can wait, because I know that it feels like they can't. Trust me, I understand that. I run around in a very anxious state far too often. But try to take a moment to enjoy the solemnity and the peace that the community comes with attending Mass. Or even just sit in church for a moment. Maybe other things can't wait, but they will wait. And you deserve that moment of respite from the demands of the outside world. So enjoy your season of confirmation. You don't need to take in everything. You don't need to understand everything. You have a full life ahead of you for that. Just try to remember that you have a home here. You belong here. You are loved, and this is the spirit of confirmation.